They never truly hated the game of football. No, that was never the root of their anger. What they despised was the audacity of someone daring to rewrite its story. They hated the fact that a black man in a hoodie and gold chain could step into a room filled with millionaires, command every set of eyes in it, and do so without seeking permission from anyone. They hated that Deion Sanders didn't wait quietly in the corner for his turn like they wanted him to. He didn't bow before the altar of the old guard. He didn't kneel to kiss the rings of those who built empires on the backs of unpaid college talent. And now, as Coach Prime steps forward, not as a player, not as a flashy brand, but as a father, a mentor, a builder of men, they label him with the same word they've used for every black figure who refuses to play submissive: a problem. This week at Big 12 Media Day, Deion Sanders took the podium, but he wasn't there to play the role the media wants from him. He wasn't there to sell merchandise or toss out a soundbite they could loop endlessly on SportsCenter. He was there to tell a truth so raw, so unfiltered, it made the air in the room heavier. And the truth he spoke? It cut deeper than anything they were ready to hear. He said college football needs a salary cap. Not because he wants to drag players back into the old system, but because the new system, the so-called NIL gold rush, has become nothing more than a shinier version of the same plantation, replacing chains with dollar signs. He called it what it is, a system breaking the soul of the game. The reaction? Predictable. Paul Finebaum, the self-anointed high priest of Southern football tradition, couldn't help himself. He leaned into the microphone, his voice dripping with smug certainty, and called Deion a hypocrite. No nuance, no thoughtful engagement. Just the same tired dismissal that gatekeepers have always used when someone dares to kick down their gates. But this wasn't really about a salary cap. It never was. This was about power. It was about who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to shape the future of college football. Because when Nick Saban called for NIL regulation, they nodded along as if he were delivering gospel truth. When Dabo Swinney told players they should be grateful, they applauded. But when Deion Sanders dared to say the exact same thing, suddenly, the pitchforks came out. Why? Because Deion Sanders doesn't apologize for who he is. Because Deion doesn't wait for permission, he acts. And when the game changed, he didn't just adapt, he became the change. And that terrifies them. This is more than a fight over NIL rules. This is a fight over narrative, over legacy, over whether black leadership in college football will be treated as equal, or as something to be tolerated only when it entertains. They say he's a hypocrite, but really, they're just exposing themselves. When Deion Sanders stood behind that podium, he didn't speak in vague platitudes. He looked straight into the cameras and said, "I wish there was a cap." And the silence that followed wasn't confusion, it was discomfort. Because Deion wasn't just questioning the chaos of NIL, he was ripping apart the illusion that it's helping everyone. He dared to say out loud what every coach whispers behind closed doors. It's unsustainable for freshman athletes, unproven and untested, to be handed million-dollar deals while entire rosters scramble for scraps. The problem isn't that the money exists. The problem is that it has no structure, no order, no protection for the very players it claims to empower. And here's the irony. Deion Sanders, the same man who fought for his players at Jackson State, who helped kids from overlooked communities secure deals, who turned Shadore Sanders and Travis Hunter into household names, he's the one saying, enough is enough. Why? Because he's lived it. He's been on both sides of the line. He's not some commentator sitting in a climate-controlled studio. He's been in those locker rooms. He's seen what happens when a dollar starts chasing a dream before that dream is ready. The second his words left his mouth, the vultures began to circle. Within hours, pundits were rewriting the story. Suddenly, Coach Prime wasn't a pioneer anymore. He was a sellout. A man cashing in on the very chaos he now warned against. They didn't care about his experience. They didn't care about the heart behind his words. They went straight for the jugular because to them, a black man talking about structure is more dangerous than a white coach exploiting the lack of it. Deion's message wasn't about shutting players up. It was about saving the game's soul. He never said players shouldn't earn. He said they should be protected. He said the game should have balance, respect, and integrity. But messages like that don't sell ad space. They don't make for juicy radio debates. They don't fit the narrative of tearing down leaders for sport. So they twisted his words, recast him. And yet, despite the venom dripping from Finebaum's commentary, Deion Sanders didn't flinch. He didn't storm into a press conference to trade insults. He didn't post a late-night social media rant. He stayed grounded, anchored in the same faith, family, and purpose that have guided him for decades. Because when you walk with God, you don't need validation from men like Paul Finebaum. In reality, Finebaum didn't expose Deion's hypocrisy. He exposed his own fear. Fear that the game is shifting and that the people shifting it no longer require his stamp of approval. Fear that the audience doesn't see Deion Sanders as a novelty anymore, but as the future of college football. And the truth is, Finebaum's choice to call Deion a hypocrite wasn't about truth. It was about convenience. It was easy. It would go viral. It played to a crowd still clinging to the belief that leadership must look a certain way, talk a certain way, be molded in their image. But Deion Sanders isn't here to conform to their blueprint. He's here to follow the one God gave him. And just when they think they've silenced him, he reminds them that his foundation runs deeper than their approval. His strength comes from his family. His compass comes from his faith. That's the part the media doesn't understand or refuses to admit. Deion's confidence isn't arrogance. It's rooted in faith, in a lifetime of beating odds stacked against him. It's rooted in raising sons like Shadore and Shiloh not just to be great athletes but strongmen. It's rooted in mentoring Travis Hunter like he's his own blood. It's rooted in being a father figure to young men who've never had one. So when they call him a hypocrite, he doesn't clap back. He prays, he works, he leads. Because Coach Prime knows that the moment you try to save young lives, you'll face pushback from those profiting off chaos. They want him to take the bait. They want him to lose his cool so they can point and say, "See, that's who he really is." But Deion refuses. They want him to play the villain. He plays the teacher. And that's why his foundation will always outlast their criticism. Deion Sanders didn't just flip a roster in Colorado. He flipped the entire narrative around what's possible in college football. And the media hasn't forgiven him for it. They're used to controlling the story. But Deion doesn't just control his own story. He is the story. From Jackson State to Boulder, he's shown that you don't need to come from a blue blood program to lead like one. That shakes them. Because if Deion were simply winning games, they'd tolerate him. But he's winning attention, hearts, and influence, and doing it his way, with faith. With black culture unapologetically front and center. With the kind of confidence they call arrogance simply because it isn't theirs. And so they attack him, not because he's failing, but because they can see he's not going anywhere. They fear that other coaches, players, and programs will follow his example. Because if Prime succeeds, the old system crumbles. Here's the truth they don't want to admit. Deion Sanders isn't against players making money. He was one of the first in line to fight for that right. But he's not blind to the pitfalls. He sees where this is headed. NIL is turning teenagers into walking dollar signs, handed millions without the financial literacy, structure, or mentorship to handle it. Schools throw money around like confetti and cut ties the second a player underperforms. When he talks about a cap, he's not talking about limiting ambition. He's talking about protecting futures. He's seen what happens when young men are thrown into the fire without armor. Fame without foundation collapses fast. The media twisted his words into an attack on players, but that was never his intent. His goal is to protect them. And that's what sets Prime apart. He actually cares about what happens after the cameras stop rolling. His critics predicted he'd fade away once his sons moved on. They claimed that without Shadore or Travis Hunter, Colorado's star would dim. But reality proved them wrong. Talent isn't what keeps Deion relevant. Talent is what's drawn to him. This offseason, while other programs scrambled to fill holes, Deion reloaded. He brought in Guju Lewis, one of the most promising quarterback prospects in the nation. He pulled in elite transfers from across the country. Why? Because players see something bigger than a football team. They see a movement. In just 1 year, Coach Prime transformed Colorado into a national brand. He didn't do it by begging. He didn't do it with empty gimmicks. He did it with vision, presence, and truth. And recruits know he's not chasing clout. He's building culture. So no, he hasn't crumbled. He's evolved. While they keep counting wins, he's counting lives changed. That's his real scoreboard.